Joe Biden has not announced that he is going to run yet. However, he is testing the waters and he is apologizing for some of his past behavior that could be brought up as attacks against him in his election or in the election. So Anita Hill, of course, is coming up quite a bit. And at the time of the Clarence Thomas hearings for the Supreme Court, Joe Biden happened to be the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So he had a lot of control over how those hearings went on. And unfortunately, he did not handle them appropriately, especially by today's standards. Now, he's apologizing for all of that, and let's take a look at what he has to say.
We knew a lot less about the extent of harassment back then. It's over 30 years ago. But she paid a terrible price. She was abused through the hearing. She was taken advantage of. Her reputation was attacked. I wish I could have done something. I opposed Clarence Thomas' nomination. I voted against him. To this day, I regret I couldn't come up with a way to get her the kind of hearing she deserved, given the courage she showed by reaching out to us. Nearly 30 years later, and I publicly apologized to Anita because she didn't get the hearing she deserved.
So she did not get the hearings that she deserved. There were witnesses who could have corroborated what she was saying, and those witnesses were not allowed to testify. I think that was problematic, but there were also other things that were problematic, including the way the line of questioning went for Anita Hill versus Clarence Thomas. There was a point in the hearings where Clarence Thomas and Joe Biden were joking around about NFL teams, which I thought was ridiculous given how aggressively Anita Hill was grilled. Now, I don't have a problem with Anita Hill getting grilled and getting asked questions that are important in determining what the truth is, right? But I do have a problem when there's a double standard in the way the two individuals were questioned.
Yeah, at least Kavanaugh was aggressively questioned by the Democrats this time around. So look, let's be clear here about what happened and didn't happen. So Joe Biden was not against Anita Hill. He was on the Democratic side and he voted against Clarence Thomas. He was the chair of that committee. But back then, and unfortunately Biden still has this in his nature and has gotten in trouble for it a couple of times recently. He wants to bend over backwards to help the Republicans, in his mind, to be fair to the Republicans. But what wound up happening was that it wound up being unfair to Anita Hill, who was called by the Democrats. Mm-hmm. So Clarence Thomas got to testify before Anita Hill and after Anita Hill. Well, that's not fair.
Right.
And at the time, the Judiciary Committee was made up of 14 all white, all male senators. Okay, the Republicans, of course, went after her 100% and supported Clarence Thomas 100%. That's what they do, right? And in fact, one of them charged her with, and if you guys don't remember, and I don't blame you, it was a long time ago, I do remember the hearings. She said that he sexually harassed her and kept asking her out on dates, and she said no, and he kept persisting, and he made crass sexual jokes, and it just went on and on and on, etc. One of the Republicans accused her of erotomania.
Jesus.
Okay,
no.
So now when it was the Democrats' turn to question Anita Hill, and Biden in specific, he wasn't against her, but he also aggressively questioned her. So why? To be fair.
I'm gonna show you evidence of that in just a minute, but this isn't the first time that Biden has attempted to kind of apologize for his behavior. Here he is in an interview, and I found what he had to say here questionable to say the least, and I'll explain why after you watch.
I wish I could have done more to prevent those questions the way they asked them. I hope my colleagues learned from that. My biggest regret was I didn't know how I could shut you off if you were a senator and you were attacking Anita Hill's character. Under the Senate rules, I can't gavel you down and say you can't ask that question, although I tried. And so what happened was she got victimized again during the process.
It seems like you get it now versus back in 91.
Well, I think I got it in 91. I don't think people have their own opinion.
I wish I could have stopped them from asking the types of questions that they asked her. I think I got it back in 91, right? So let's go back to 1991 and show you a clip from the actual hearing. Take a look.
It is appropriate to ask Professor Hill anything any member wishes to ask her to plumb the depths of her credibility.
The internet exists, homeboy. Like, everyone's got receipts, everyone. And this doesn't only apply to Biden, this applies to every single politician. We're not stupid.
So look, I'm telling you, I get, and I cared about politics back then. And by the way, I was on the wrong side back then as a Republican. But I get that back then they wanted to bend over backwards to be fair to the other side. Although today the Democrats still do the same thing, right? The Republicans never return the favor, but okay, anyway. But in the meanwhile, you're being unfair to Anita Hill. If they were fair in the level of questioning they had for Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas, that would be a different story. But they gave Clarence Thomas every break and they gave Anita Hill no breaks. In fact, this is maybe the most important part. There was 3 corroborating witnesses for Anita Hill, and Joe Biden, who is the chair, who gets to make those decisions, did not allow them to testify. Nah, that's bad. That's really bad. So, and I remember watching, and I didn't know that they didn't allow 3 corroborating witnesses on Anita Hill. Could that have affected my point of view on it? Could have affected everybody's point of view on it. And so you can't put that one on the Republicans. You're the chair. You could have done anything you wanted, and you chose not to present those witnesses.
I just think that if you're gonna apologize, right, and take responsibility, then truly do it. Don't try to whitewash what actually happened. Don't try to make it seem as though you were trying to fight the unfair treatment of Professor Hill, because that's not what you were doing. You were aiding and abetting the unfair treatment that took place during those hearings.
And by the way, they asked Anita Hill, did Biden ever apologize to you in person? She said no, she never got a direct apology from Biden and said that the statute of limitations has run out. On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.